welcome to the AdtechGod Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdtechGod. Welcome to the AdtechGod Pod, where we meet the entrepreneurs in the buy side of AdTech. Today we have Jeromy Sonne, the CEO at daypart.ai. Jeromy is a serial entrepreneur, having launched multiple startups over the past few years. He's also ran a boutique agency and worked in marketing focused on social ads and performance marketing. I know Jeromy and have been engaged with him on social media for years, so I'm really curious to see if he's as unhinged on a podcast as he is on X. Jeromy, welcome to the AdtechGod Pod.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. I'm on my best behavior, so I'll try and be semi-hinged here as we talk. So
you could be like 50% hinged. Your tweets are out of control sometimes, and I love it.
I don't think they're that out of control. I think our industry is just very conservative, to be honest. I think that like in other, for tech, I'm boring. But for ad tech, I'm like really out there. So I'll do my best. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm kind of a yapper, so we'll see where it takes me. So, yeah. I'm
like twiddling my thumbs right now, hoping you say something that's like totally unhinged, and I just bust up laughing for 15 minutes. But we'll see. And Jeromy, thank you again for being here. And I, obviously see your posts. You have a very good understanding of the industry. You obviously understand AI really well, and I've seen you post about that quite a bit. But can you take me back to, how you got started, how you got into ad tech? What made you really focus on the buy side of the industry, rather than the sell side?
My entire career is an unplanned accident. What is the master plan? Why did Jeromy focus on the buy side? It just kind of happened, and then it just kept kind of happening, to be totally honest. So everybody laughs, and you should, because this is a ridiculous story, because I was like young and dumb, and I was in college, and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I've shared this like anecdote a couple of times, but I was in ROTC, and I was gearing up to go to law school, and I was going to be a JAG attorney because that all seemed like very respectable and like a good thing to do. And I was doing it mostly, because it was very respectable. My parents supported it and all of that. They meant the best for me, but I was like, oh man, I really don't think I want to do this. It was like my junior year of college. And then that movie, The Social Network, came out, and I go, oh, that's what I'll do instead. I'll be a tech billionaire, just like Zuck, right? That seems easy and fun. I'd love to rip shots of tequila and code and move to Silicon Valley and be like a cool guy, right? Because that's exactly how it goes for all the impressionable youth out there. It's 100% like that. Don't let anybody else tell you different. I'm joking, of course, but ended up happening there was we did that. And at some point, somebody told me being the idea guy was a bad thing. And I needed to figure out some sort of like actual skill set to contribute to like growing the business, which I think I'll do marketing. And in 2011, I started running Facebook ads, now Meta ads. And turns out that's a really good time to get into running Facebook ads. And so that startup was like a unmitigated tire fire of a disaster. But on the plus side, the one thing that did work was we were able to acquire a lot of users very cheaply because I got pretty good at like Facebook ads, right? And then when I was figuring out what to do next, as I'd been like networking in the startup world, some of my buddies were like, hey, can you help out with Facebook ads? Can you help out with Twitter ads? Like whatever, I was like, yeah, sure, and I would give it a shot. And one of the early projects, a small team based out of Iowa, and we helped take it to #1 grossing in the iTunes and Play Store for education, like really early on in my career, right? That was a team effort. It wasn't just me, to be clear, but I was definitely like one of the core parts of that, and beat out like a bunch of F500 education companies, all of that. And that has a way of hijacking your career, right? And so spent the next couple of years doing a lot of like app marketing and growth marketing, startups, F500s, kind of everything in between. So my career really took off in a strong way there. Ran a marketing agency. I built like a kind of small media buying agency. It only ever got up to about 5 people or so. It wasn't huge. And then kind of moved on from that, was a marketing director at a fintech company for a while, like a B2B fintech company. And that was based out of Iceland, which was cool because I got to fly to Iceland to do that. And then after I was done with that, started consulting again, and then I kind of looked up and I was like, this was about like 2016, 2017. I was like, Meta is automating my job away. This like conversion algorithm. This is no good news for my media buy-in career. So I think I'm going to go ahead and learn legacy and programmatic. And so I started kind of becoming like more of a Swiss Army knife, like trying to help basically growth-oriented brands like figure out how to like utilize all of these. And then I started an ad tech company, and that went really well until it didn't. And we had, unfortunately, a very, very large customer leave us bag holding millions of dollars, like 4 or 5x times the amount of capital that we ended up raising. And so that failed. And I stepped down from there, moved on. And now I am working at the intersection of like ad tech and AI, right? And so I'm generally pretty bullish on the effect that AI is going to have on the industry in the coming years. And, really excited, cooking up, kind of some, I wouldn't say top secret or like stealth mode or anything like that, but definitely cooking up something behind the scenes that's it's pretty big. And, after a couple of iterations have gotten there. So, yeah, I guess I'm a serial entrepreneur, but I really hope that one of them actually pans out one of these days. So
that's everybody's goal. But I mean, you have to be able to pivot quickly when you're a small, nimble startup, right? Like you're seeing opportunity to generate revenue and cover payroll. You're seeing trends that move really quickly. And I think that's one of the big advantages of being a startup is, being able to pivot and see the opportunity. And then one of the disadvantages is, like you said, there's not a lot of cash on hand. So there are times where, you pivot, it's the wrong pivot. That's not good. You have a client that doesn't pay. That's not good. So you can't really hold out long term, but you definitely learn a ton. And it sounds like you learned a ton just from buying social to really, buying all types of media across the board.
Yeah. That's actually been like, I think one of my like big secret advantages, right? And so there's this weird gap in the industry that I think that you're aware of, right? Like between ad tech and then like agencies and then like the clients that they actually work with, right? It's all very detached, which is kind of weird compared to like most of tech, right? Where it's like very tightly integrated and everybody's talking to each other and iterating all the time and stuff like that. And then it's an interesting kind of problem there. But then there's another gap that I think is less talked about, which is basically like your social performance advertisers versus like your programmatic and legacy buyers are just two completely different audiences, right? And they basically never talk to each other, right? And so it's been interesting, right? Like as I've kind of traversed across the industry in a bunch of different roles, I mean, all on the buy side, right? Or client side or agency or whatever, I've kind of gotten to see that. And, there's I think like a huge opportunity for people to collaborate and learn from each other a bit more. Because there's like, lessons that can be broadly applied across all of these different contexts that I think would serve everybody really well. It's just those conversations aren't happening. So sometimes, like I said, I joke that I'm a Swiss Army knife or something like that. But like the reality is that I'm just able to like make some orthogonal connections here with how, this is how meta buyers think about buying stuff, right? And this is how Google buyers or SEM search marketers think about buying stuff. And this is how like programmatic buyers think about buying stuff. I'm like, can we bridge that gap? Can we find something in the middle, right? That like makes it work better for everybody. And so that's like, cross applying those has been like a big part of my career for sure. And I think where a lot of my like insights come from.
Do you see, and I know you talk a lot about AI, obviously company name has .ai in it. Do you see AI really being the thing that changes the buying industry? Do you think it's an add-on? Do you think it's a standalone product? I have a lot of people on here that talk about AI. A lot of the DSPs are starting to launch AI functionality. But do you think that it's really going to be the one thing that's going to take us to the next level of automated buying and hitting those, KPIs and targets that clients are looking for?
Yes, but not right away is basically my answer. I think it's going to take longer than AI people think it will. And I think it'll be faster than the anti-AI or AI skeptical people think it will be, right? So something in the middle, which is, a very diplomatic answer, but like the truth of the matter is this, right? Like there's going to be waves of this kind of like 1.0 and Web 2.0. And, I guess the way that I'm looking at it is, yes, AI is going to be extremely transformative. And I think especially on like the buy and sell side, like the more mechanical parts of the ads industry, I'm more skeptical that it's going to overtake like ad creative. I think that humans are really good at that. But yeah, I think like a lot of the button clicking and a lot of your rote tasks are going to go away. And I'm generally a big fan of the co-pilot like approach, if you will, when it comes to artificial intelligence, right? I don't think humans are going to get replaced, but like, could one senior buyer, instead of managing 10 juniors, have one other junior and then AI? Yeah, I absolutely think so. And to be clear, I don't see that as like replacing jobs or being some job apocalypse in like the ads industry. I think it's like more like freeing people up to do higher value human tasks, right? Like focusing on creative, focusing on strategy, focusing on offers, and, you know, working on their best, highest sort of outputs, right? Rather than just clicking more buttons in trade desk or whatever, right? So yes, I'm generally quite bullish, but I think there will be waves, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It's funny because you mentioned you don't think it'll replace the creativity side of things. I don't think it'll replace the creativity, because I think creativity is really a really skillful thing. Like some of the people out there, the creative ideas that they come up with are there. The creative images that they do for, display ads or video ads is pretty impressive. I see it more as an optimization tool. Like it's going to optimize the creative, maybe offer various types of creative that may perform better than the other, maybe duplicate the creative to customize it per, user that it's targeting. I can't see it replacing the creative piece of it all. I think that's one of the things that I feel is pretty solid in the space, that, creativity is creativity. It's not easy. It's very hard to get a robot or some sort of automation to create something from scratch that's all that relevant to, today, and the feelings and the emotions and the buyer needs that are existent in the market. So yeah, I do see it as optimization. I do see it as efficiency. That for sure, I think AI is going to change the industry quite a bit.
I do think where it's going to be like really disruptive is that AI kind of fundamentally shifts the ability to execute campaigns in a more like distributed way rather than a centralized way. So I think if AI is going to be a like existential threat, if you will, right, to the ad tech business model, it's going to be because the centralized big DSP or RTB midstream, I don't know, is going to be as relevant, because instead what you can do is you can have like AI sitting over top of a bunch of self-serve platforms, right? Or more skillfully moving budget between platforms and things like that, right? So I think that like DSPs already, I don't want to say commodity, because like, definitely Trade Desk is, some of the others are doing like some really interesting things that do set them apart. But, I think there's downward pressure to be more commodity-like for DSPs on the buy side. And I think that AI is just going to accelerate that, So I actually think like what Trade Desk is doing is quite smart with like their open path, right? Where they're like connecting directly to publishers and stuff like that. I think that's incredibly smart. I think that's how they keep value. But yeah, I think you'll start to see more of that. Like, more, we've seen a lot of horizontal consolidation in the industry. I think AI starts to push for vertical consolidation, right? Where, because you don't need a centralized architecture as much, I think you're going to see more of a distributed architecture with like agentic AI, especially, right? As far as creative goes, like, yes, I do think that like tweaking or personalization is going to be like a huge use case for like AI in the ad creative, but like, I don't see, at least in the near term, a future where they're fully ideating creative ad campaigns or anything like that, right? At most, maybe it's like a pair with like a copywriter to like bounce ideas off of and validate and stuff like that.
Do you think AI will play a bigger role in stuff like, analytics and optimization rather than pure creation of creative?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. I think that like what you'll start to see is like, more of a, so performance marketers actually really do this a lot already, right? Which is they'll launch many, many, many iterations of individual like ad creatives, right? They'll like let Meta or Google basically sort out which one to what audience is performing the best, right? And I think that you'll end up seeing something like that in the programmatic universe, where, you're going to have companies that do this like tweaking, personalization and optimization of ad creative towards, individualized audiences, right? Where it's like changing the ad creative like 10%, 20%, right? Maybe changing like a specific call out of like, oh, what city you're in, right? Or like what specific customer archetype you are, things like that, right? But like, again, the core creative messaging, I don't see that going away from humans. If anything, I think actually humans are going to be more valued for that sort of thing. And I'm bullish on the future of AI and advertising because, candidly, I'm like fairly certain that like it's going to lead us to a creative renaissance, right? When agencies aren't spending all of their time like doing micro optimizations of media buying and interpretation and pulling reports and trying to like figure out what they all mean, and LLMs can come in and help out with a lot of that stuff. I think you're going to see people really focus on like creative as the differentiator, and I think that's really cool. I think that's like getting the industry back to what it does best.
Yeah, I think that all kind of goes back to the efficiency piece of it. It's really like having a handy tool, in front of you. The same way a computer changed the efficiency of sending messages via an email and how much efficiency that drove in just communication across the board. I see AI really as that powerful tool. Like, I think it's going to reduce the time needed for everyone to do their work. It's going to give you tools and actions that you previously had to work on for 4 hours in an Excel document. It'll calculate it and spit it out for you in 2 seconds. And yeah, I mean, hopefully that is the case. Like, hopefully this does create some sort of creative renaissance, and we start to see how important creative plays a role in our industry, because I'm starting to feel like creative has really taken a back seat and is focused more around algorithms and delivering a particular KPI for a client rather than focusing on, is this creative really good and relevant to my audience? So I'm curious to see how it all plays a role over the next few years.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm right there with you. I think at its best, AI, the total impact is probably, and I don't mean this to downplay, right? But like the same level of impact that the internet had, right? Generally, right? Like I view it as kind of that like next technological like shift. And that's huge and that's extremely impactful, right? But it's not going to change, I think, the core of like humanity and how we interact with one another and all of that, right? It's just like another massive shift in technology, and we're all going to adapt, and there's going to be some speed bumps. But yeah, my hope is, this last iteration of tech, it feels like we've all been like chained to our laptops, right? We've become beholden to the tech platforms we use, right? And I feel like, AI at its best is like freeing us from that, right? It's going to make tech work for humans instead of humans work for tech, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're looking at a few years of some really transformative changes in our space. I'm excited for it. I like AI. I think everybody's starting to embrace it and use it in some capacity. It'll be really interesting to see as, more DSPs. I think Viant released some AI functionality for buying, and everybody else just seems to be doing something in relation to like efficiency and campaign management and setup and creative. So it'll be interesting to see how things change over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think one of the first few winners of AI is definitely going to be like established big platforms that have a lot of data that they can easily apply it to, right? But then, like the internet itself, right? Like when you saw, kind of the first wave of the internet, like, oh, the big publishers, like, oh, let's just put our newspaper online, right? And like get more distribution and all of that, right? And that like did basically help the established players right out of the gate, right? But over time, people figured out how to actually use this new technology in ways we weren't anticipating, like social networking and stuff like that. And I think AI will get there, but we just don't know what it looks like until we see it, So I'm curious to see the direction that it goes.
Okay, we're gonna shift out of AI now. We're gonna talk about something that I think will be a little fun too. I usually ask people, what keeps you up in regards to the industry. So I want to ask you, like, what really bugs you about the industry? What keeps you up at night? What is a frustration that you see? Because there are a few things that come up, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that too.
Oh gosh, how many hours do we have to do this?
4 hours. 4 hours.
Jeez. Okay, I don't know if I could. I don't know if that would be enough time. I have a lot of problems with the ad tech industry, right? I jokingly named my newsletter, like my email newsletter, the Ad Tech Heretic, right? But yeah, it's I have a lot of issues with the way that the industry works, right? I think my single biggest issue, if I had to narrow it down to just one thing, I am a staunch believer that like SMBs are massively overlooked in this industry, that SMBs are commanding an increasingly large percentage of the ad spend because everything is shifting online, right? And shifting quite rapidly, and performance brands are becoming increasingly relevant. I understand the challenges of working with those brands. I understand it deeply on a few levels, on having been on both sides, right? But like, I really wish, I one day hope for the world where somebody can go and sign up for a DSP and slap down a credit card and just get started, right? Like, so I think that, this very old school enterprisey way of selling and servicing customers and all of that, it makes sense on like a lot of levels. I get it, but I wish it wasn't that way. The biggest thing that bugs me is, I really wish it was like an even playing field for people to have access to tools and inventory and all of that to be able to compete with the big brands on a more equitable sort of marketplace, if you will, right? So
it's funny you mentioned that, because last week, as part of our one of my sponsors for both the event that we had in New York, which is Basis, as well as some announcements that were made last week, also a sponsor which I have to disclose, which was Vibe. Like, they seem to really target that mid to long tail, small and medium business size clients. So it's nice to see that some of the platforms out in the market are starting to address it and realize that there is an opportunity for, the mechanic shop and the bakery to be able to simply buy media and target the zip codes or DMAs that they're looking for to drive the engagement, which is where I think Google has really dominated, because they've made it relatively easy for anyone to, put a credit card on file, run a $300 campaign and call it a day and see if it backs out to something. And so it's nice to see that media buying across the entire space is starting to kind of change and address those markets. Both of those companies I mentioned seem to be focusing on that. I know that you've focused on that in the past as well. So it's good to know that we're starting to see that it doesn't have to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation spending money on a DSP. It can be a mom and pop shop with $1,000 budget and a credit card.
Yeah. And I think that I know we moved past AI, but yeah, I see that as one of like the early use cases, right? Like, ooh, what's a PMP? Ooh, should I use IAS? What is IAS? Fraud? Ooh, that's scary. Like all of that sort of stuff, right? I think that AI, whether it lives on the agency side or the advertiser side or the platform side or the pub side or whatever, right? It probably will be some smattering of all of the above, will help these SMBs actually navigate this, right? Will alleviate the support burden that so many platforms are afraid of taking on by taking on SMB clients. And I think it will, I'm really hopeful that that's part of the reason I'm focused on AI in my career is, I think that it has the ability to make this whole thing be like a more functional marketplace and service retail in a meaningful way that, downstream is quite disruptive, right? Like when everybody has access to the same tools, I don't know if it is a given that like your giant CPG holding companies or whatever are as dominant when everybody kind of has equal firepower, if you will, to get their offer into the market. I think it becomes more meritocratic for brands and SMBs, and I think that's better for consumers too, and publishers, candidly. I think it's really interesting. I'm bullish on it. I'm hopeful. We'll see. Maybe it's just a cope. Maybe it's just my dream, but I'm hopeful.
It's funny because we'll go back to AI because I don't mind talking about it. I think the simplicity of use will help quite a bit in tapping that SMB market because, to you and I, like logging into the trade desk, logging into a beeswax account, logging into Basis, we already have a good understanding if you've used a DSP at some point in your career. Like you can log in, take a look, maybe buttons are a little different, maybe targeting features are different, the drop downs are a little different, but we understand every aspect of what's being offered to us. But for small and medium-sized businesses, like it's very hard for them to understand what all these metrics mean, what inventory quality means. To them, they're just buying media online. And so I think AI will make it a lot easier. Upload your logo. It spits out some kind of a simple creative that can be utilized. Where are you targeting? Is there an audience type that you like? Here we go. We've matched an audience type. What's your budget? Click live. It's live. Here's your report. Congratulations. Like you want people to walk into your store, you want people to buy the product from your online or e-commerce store, or are you looking for just like branding? it's going to simplify it quite a bit, which is where I think like social has moved towards, where it's pretty easy to use Instagram and run ads. Like it really takes just a credit card and anyone can do it. Lookalike audience, target. Okay, you want profile views? Great. You want followers? Great. Here you go. You're done. So it'll be interesting to see how SMBs start to get access to buying media in a much more simple manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's like the interesting part of AI, right? Because like I get why all of these like extremely advanced enterprise features are prioritized, right? Inside of any DSP. But if you can add that AI layer on top so you have maximal functionality available, anybody can go as deep as they want, right? But like the default experience is working with the AI to set up like a quote unquote smart campaign or whatever, right? I think that's going to be like absolutely transformative. And the faster that the rest of ad tech that isn't social or search gets on board, the better they're going to do unlocking those audiences because they're hungry. Like these performance brands are hungry to have any option besides just Google Meta over and over, right? Like, and I think that that's healthy. Having that healthy competition will be extremely powerful, not just for publishers, but for advertisers, brands, agencies, and of course the end consumer that is actually seeing the ad. So
just take me to my last question, Jeromy. It's a different one. Are there any brands that have your loyalty? Is there a brand out there that you can't live without? I'd love to hear what it is and why.
Is it okay if I answer with like 2 or 3 here? Because it basically comes down to product quality for me, to be totally honest. It's not so much like the advertising or the branding. I'm not like seduced by like, I don't know, cool lifestyle stuff or whatever. Maybe I'm jaded because I work in the industry and I see all the little tricks and I'm just like, meh, like a grumpy old guy. Like, I don't know. But yeah, so number 1 is Honda because I treat my cars like absolute garbage. I ride them very, very hard. I mean, I do basic maintenance and all that. But yeah, I take like pretty intense road trips and man, like my Honda cars have like always outlasted everything else. And like I contrast that with like I bought a Volkswagen and it was nothing but nightmare fuel the entire time I owned it. And so yeah, very, very brand loyal to Honda. I will consider a Toyota and I don't even think I'll buy anything else. Maybe a Tesla if I had the money, but I'm poor, so I don't. It turns out being a startup founder and all that common stock that's worth many millions of dollars, you don't get millions of dollars for that, right? That's just what some VC wrote down in this Excel sheet that it's quote unquote worth, But so if one day I could afford a Tesla, maybe. But so Honda is number 1. Number 2, this is kind of a crazy one, but Sorel boots. Those things are like the most comfortable, highest quality boots I have ever owned in my entire life. So I think I haven't mentioned it on this podcast, so I'll mention it. I spent like 2 years doing the backpacking thing on the road with my family, and I lived all over the US as well as in Central America and Europe. It was me, my wife, and my son started off at 18 months old, and by the time we were done, he was over 3. So it's kind of cool experience getting to do that. We were actually on the Today Show for it, being highlighted as like a digital nomad family thing. Did a lot of hiking, a lot of outdoor stuff, right? Sorel boots, man, those things, comfy, waterproof, like extreme high quality. I would not go with anything else, for sure. And then Mazzetta the CPG, like the pasta sauces, and they do like the pickled banana peppers and olives and stuff. Like I am very weird about ingredients, probably because again on that trip, like I lived in I spent like a good couple of months in Italy and stuff like that. I started to get extremely strong opinions about ingredient quality, and at least in the US, that is the best that I can find that's generally available in the stores. So yeah, Mazzetta, I'm very brand loyal to Mazzetta also. And again, it all just comes back to like quality of the product, right? So I don't know, I guess that's a boring answer for an advertising guy because I'm not like, ooh, Nike is so cool or whatever. But like, yeah, for me, it's all about like kind of product quality and like reliability and stuff. And so all about that.
Awesome. Well, Jeromy, that brings us to the end of the podcast. I really want to thank you for being here and thank you for taking time out of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm just honored that anybody wants to listen to me ramble. So
I do. I enjoy it, Jeromy. So I appreciate you and I appreciate you being here today.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdtechGod Pod, a podcast for the people, about the people that make AdTech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.